I trust you are all doing well. This time around, I want to look at the concept of elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand. Now, what we have to know is that when the price of a commodity changes, other things being equal, demand also changes. And then when income changes, demand will also change. And when prices of other goods change, demand will also change. So elasticity of demand measures the extent to which a change in price, income, or price of other goods affects the demand for a particular commodity. So this means that there are three types of elasticities. There are three types. And these are price elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand, and cross elasticity of demand. Now, with regard to the price elasticity of demand, we look at how a change in price of the commodity itself affects the demand for that same commodity. And that is price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand. And technically we say it is the percentage change in demand for the commodity as a result of percentage change in price of the commodity itself. And that is price elasticity. And then the second one is income elasticity. And this one measures how a change in income would affect demand for the commodity. And then the third one, the cross. With regard to the cross, we look at how a change in price of commodity X, in other words, one commodity, will affect demand for commodity Y. That is another commodity. Good. So without much ado, we want to start with price elasticity. And with this, there are 5 scenarios for price elasticity of demand. There are 5 scenarios. Now the first one is what we call elastic demand. For elastic demand, what it simply means is that a smaller percentage change in price will lead to a greater percentage change in quantity demanded. The price changes by a small margin and demand will change by a greater margin. In this case, the coefficient is greater than 1. The coefficient is greater than 1. By assuming, let's say, the price of a commodity changes by 10% and demand changes by 20%. Remember, it is a change in demand resulting from a change in price. So if you divide 20% by 10%, the coefficient will be 2, which is greater than 1. And in this case, it is termed as elastic demand. Now for elastic demand, what we must also know is that the demand curve will have a gentle slope, as you can see from the screen. So for elastic demand, the price will change by a very small margin. Small margin, but demand will change by a greater margin. And commodities that tend to have elastic demand are commodities that have a lot of substitutes. Remember, since the commodity has a lot of substitutes, with the slightest change in price, the consumers will react. They can easily find alternatives. So in this case, they will switch to other commodities easily. And that will make the demand to be elastic. And then also, if the commodity is not all that important, luxuries. For luxuries, life can go on without them. So in this case, the price changes by a small margin and consumers will refuse to buy. And that will make demand to be elastic as well. Then the next scenario is inelastic demand. When demand is fairly inelastic, it means that the price will change by a greater margin, but quantity will change by a very small margin. So as you can see from the screen, here, inelastic demand, the price has changed by a greater margin, but quantity has changed by a very small margin. Inelastic demand normally relates to necessities, such as accommodation, transportation, fuel, and what have you. In this case, the price normally increases by a greater margin, but consumers still continue to do or buy. And commodities that do not have a lot of substitutes. If it doesn't have a lot of substitutes, then definitely demand will be inelastic. So food in general tends to have inelastic demand since it's a necessity, number one, and consumers do not have a lot of what? Options. So if you are hungry, you have no option than to get a food. So food tends to have inelastic demand. Now the next scenario is unitary elastic demand. So for unitary elastic, here a percentage change in price leads to an equal percentage change in quantity demanded. So in this case, let's say price changes by 10%, quantity changes by 10%. Remember, 10% over 10%, it will cancel out, and then we'll get 1. So for unitary elastic, the coefficient of elasticity of demand is always what? 1. And for unitary elastic, please remember that the demand curve will assume the shape of rectangular hyperbola. It will assume the shape of what? Rectangular hyperbola. Good. Now, let's talk about perfectly inelastic demand. Perfectly inelastic demand, here, remember that the price is changing, but quantity remains well, the same. So the demand curve is vertical in nature. And what does it mean? There are times that consumers are even willing to pay higher prices, but the quantity is fixed. Nothing can be done about it. And in that case, we say demand is perfectly inelastic. Like a situation where the consumer, let's say, wants to attend a show. In this case, regardless of the price, consumer wants to buy it at a higher price. Buy a ticket for the show at a higher price. But if the tickets have been sold out, there's nothing the consumer can do. So the price is changing. Consumers are prepared to pay higher prices, but quantity remains the same. And then the final scenario is perfectly elastic demand. In this case, the price is fixed, perfectly elastic. The price is fixed, but quantity rather changing. That means the same price is paid for each unit bought or sold. So here, what we are saying is that we don't expect the price to change. We don't expect the price to do or change. However, if the price should change, the reaction of consumers will be infinite, so great to imagine. So let's say that a bottle of water, we all know is, let's say, $1. A bottle of water is what? $1. For instance, everybody knows it. And somebody is selling either at say $1, 50 cents, or let's say 80 cents. It's like to be strange. So in this case, the price is what? The same. If the price should change, the reaction of consumers should be what? Infinite. Good. And that is perfectly elastic demand. Good. So without much ado, I would like to end here. And then in our next video, we will look at how elasticity of demand is what? Is measured. Measurement of price elasticity of demand. Thank you for your attention.